From Zambia, then it was Sudan, then to Egypt, then Geneva, then to the UK, you know? I've got nothing to lose. I'm 67 years old, you know? Maybe I wouldn't have talked then, you know? No English-sized names, but I didn't click. I didn't click. Where did these names come from? And why have I got a name like Koto Bolofo? And I liked fashion, but no photography at the moment. Nothing, absolutely nothing. And we were allowed one camera, and it was called a Zenith camera. A Zenith camera was a Russian camera, a Soviet camera for work at magazines.
Okay.
That's what I was doing, right? Going to look for, it'll be really the first major fashion book, major fashion, done all the brands and still renovating brands, Hermes.
And you're live on Dead Radio.
Welcome to another very special episode of Dead Radio with your boy Ini, and once again we have a legend on the platform. We're gonna let our legend introduce himself, and then we're gonna get into his life journey, and you know how we do, extract those jewels for you guys to use in your everyday lives. So without further ado, yes sir.
Right, thank you very much for having me on this wonderful round table.
Thank you.
I always believe round table makes unity.
Yes.
Right, so my name is Koto Bolofo, and I was born in Lesotho, 1959, 13th November 1959, and we immigrated to South Africa. Daddy was a teacher at Fort Hare University and was a strong political activist, giving the students education, which was against the apartheid regime strongly, you know. He didn't believe in Bantu education. You know, Bantu education was for it was for Africans being called inferior. So this is really the background, you know, the family background of how I grew up in a household. And of course, you know, him poking fire at the apartheid system, it was not a very welcoming person, a welcoming African. Yes, those type of Africans were either executed or you either go to Robben Island. You know, you have a choice, you know. The easiest choice is to execute somebody. Yes, so, cut a long story short, we then had to move to Zambia because we had the secret police boss chasing active political refugees, yes, right? Because those refugees were always giving the sound of freedom. So you had people like my father being chased, my brother, my mother, and daddy being chased. We ended up in Zambia, Livingstone, where we were welcomed because, you know, President Kaunda, he needed people like my father, who can teach, you know, who gives education. So education has always been the forte of our family, especially my father, because he was to say, why can they do it and why can't Africans not do it? So that was my father's philosophy. And then Zambia, which was interesting because Zambia had just won its independence.
Yes,
it had just won independence in the 60s. Yes. And there's a photograph of me. Unfortunately, I haven't got it. You know, I've got it at home because I didn't know what a podcast was. I had no idea. You know, I said,
what was happening?
What was happening? They said it's a podcast. Well, podcasts for me, it seems like you're going to cook something. You know, porridge. You're casting porridge. Yes, you know. So anyway, there's a photograph because my dad, along the way, he used to do photographs of me, the family, and I still got his camera, which is called an AGFA camera. It was a German camera, an AGFA camera, a 35mm camera, and he just used to take pictures. And there I am, in a swimming pool with white children and black children in Zambia, integration. And he was very, very clever because this is what he wanted to see. Yes. He wanted to see the sense of what is called integration, yes, you know? So being a little child, you're unaware of this. You think, oh, I'm having a good time with little Sharon here, you know, and there's Susan, there's Susan, and and then you have like some other black children, Hadibe, there he is.
There is no division.
There's no. That is the beauty. There is no division as a child. You are playing all at the equal level. You might have a bully amongst the children to say, no, this is where I'm going to swim, and you're like, oh, I don't like him, right? But it's a natural thing.
Yes.
It's not based on color. Yes. It's just based on an instinct to say,
yes,
I'm the big one here.
It's a natural law.
Yeah, so I'm going to move you lot out. But altogether, we're playing freely. And there's a beautiful picture of me just like, just smiling like this. And this, whoever she was, Jill or Sharon, she's like next to me,
Jill or Sharon.
So that for me, I found these in the archives. And there's also, it's on my Instagram. If you look on my Instagram, my dad did pictures in, Shantytown, South Africa, of 3 of us with a blanket, dust, and smiling, But throughout all these pictures, what I noticed when I was young, throughout this course of my father being and my mother being political activists, all of my pictures, I was always smiling and always cheerful. And every single picture, I'm always smiling and really cheerful. Yeah. And it was always like, I started looking and analyzing myself to say, gosh, I never saw the hardships, you couldn't understand it as a child, but you can hear echoes of your parents, talking about, the country, it'll be, it'll find its way, its freedom and everything like that. But there was always a smile, there was always a joy of life, I was a very playful little child, really playful, naughty like children, but there was always a sense of, I've got an entertaining thing about myself, There's an entertaining thing. So then, of course, we had to move away. We were 4 years in Zambia. We had to move away to then Kenya. We had to move away because, we're still we have to keep moving. You have to keep moving.
The Great Migration.
Exactly.
Yes,
so we have to move in Kenya. And there he was a school teacher again. He was a school teacher again, a very influential one. And of course, I posted some pictures on the Instagram. You'll see my father being carried on students, on black African students. They're carrying him like this because he was very popular with students, because he gave them the insight of really saying, look, you can do it, and the thing is, you can do it better, So he had this thing of always encouraging that sense of education, Education is a very powerful tool with my father. So if you check out at Koto Bolofo on Instagram, you'll see those pictures. Okay. You'll see those pictures. I've recently posted them on there. Okay. And then you'll see the pictures of me. There's 3 children, and I've put me, on one of them, me, right? And then you'll see those pictures. So it was really from rags going slowly, kind of rising, from Zambia. Then it was Sudan, then to Egypt, then Geneva, then to the UK,
So you guys traveled from the bottom of the map
exactly
all the way to Europe.
Exactly.
The Great Migration.
Yeah, the Great Migration. And it was kind of a necessary thing because there, eventually, people, they do migrate to the UK because UK, although they've caused that system there, but you have a sense of like tolerance,
yes.
So you think, well, I think this is the country that will tolerate, yes. Political refugees. But it was not very easy to really get into the UK because the family got separated. My dad got separated. He had to try and find political asylum there, and we were stuck in Geneva for a very, very long time for him to get political asylum. So, being truthful, I've got nothing to lose. I'm 67 years old. Maybe I wouldn't have talked then. Yes, being truthful, countries like, the United Kingdom did support that system of the apartheid. They supported it because that's where they got their wealth from. They still are getting the wealth from there. Still today. So, it was not easy to be granted really a British passport. I got granted this British passport. We got into the UK around, early 70s. And I was granted a British passport in 1992. If you can work out your maths,
For 22 years.
Yeah, that's when I got granted a British passport.
So you were an illegal immigrant.
Yeah, with a thing called a United Nations travel document.
Yes, sir.
And a United Nations travel document is not a passport. It basically entitles you to stay in the country that's harboring you from the persecution, right? And in the travel document, it will say you are not allowed to travel back to South Africa or Lesotho. It's clearly written, right? But a travel document now will come to the fashion bit. Now I'm holding a travel document. Now I'm at high school, secondary school, right? It wasn't, they called it secondary school.
Secondary, not high school.
It's secondary school. It wasn't the grammar school, right? And we were living in in a council flats where they have problematic families, skinhead families, racist families, people who got
outcasts.
Exactly. People who got real problems. I got a problem with you because you got the color of that skin, right? And I'm going to beat you up, right? Or, we went to secondary school together and somehow we're still friends, but he's a skinhead, right? He said, yeah, he's all right. He's all right.
He's all right.
Yeah, he's all right. He's all right. Don't touch him. We sort of went to school together, but he's all right. We'll get the Indians at the we'll get them. So it was a survival thing. It was a survival thing to say, I gotta out of this path. I gotta stay kind of on the right side, get my balance here, because racism was also rising. It's always funny that we're talking about racism today on a global scale, right? And I, as back then when I was let's say a teenager, it was there. There was a stench of racism, riots, and all this. And then it stopped, and I thought to myself, we talk about racism to say, Daddy, what was racism?
Yeah.
And there's, oh yeah, racism. Oh, that was a bad time, man. Yeah, that bad time. A few stabbings, man. The police, they didn't like the pigs and all that, And we talk about it as if it was dinosaur.
Yes.
We talk about
ancient.
it's an ancient thing. We don't even talk about it. Yeah, Daddy, what was apartheid?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. There was a guy called Nelson or something.
Nelson.
Yeah. What was that, Dad? And then you talk about it as if it's like, oh, that was way back. And as a dad, you can't even remember.
Yes, sir.
You can't, because we've evolved. We've forgotten that. It's so historic. We've evolved, and we're all together, all unified, and Daddy, it's a really good world that we're living in. Oh my God, it's really nice. But look, Daddy, we've come viciously back to such an upside down world, which is so vicious and so nationalistic. And this is what surprised me at the age of 65 when I said, my God, it's gone round in a circle,
Life goes.
It goes round in a circle. But the circles were smaller, and then they got bigger, and then they got bigger, and then it really got really bigger. So, so Daddy got it kind of wrong. I thought it was going to be like ancient, and it still surprises me till this very day. So now we're going back to the travel document, I flash back to this travel document. I've got this travel document. So how did I become a photographer?
Yes, sir.
Not because of the influence of my father who was taking pictures along the way. I had no interest in photography whatsoever.
At all.
Yeah, not at all. My dad, when we were in Kenya, he noticed that the Indian people, they were the ones who owned the studios, and they did the passport photographs, and they did the wedding photographs. It was always the Indians. And of course my daddy said, God, the Africans should, learn this.
Why don't
and hence he bought an Agfa camera. He had it for years, right? So my dad always wanted to say, why can't we do it? But he always took pictures, but we never took note of it. We just said,
Here he comes again.
Here he comes again. That's Pops. So hey, did you man? So it was always that thing to say, why can't we do it? You know, it was a pain for him as a school teacher, always saying, why can't we do it? So now we go way into time. I'm in the UK. I'm now a local student, and I have a Cockney accent. You know what I mean, mate? You know, so, you know, it's like that. You know, are you going out with her? I don't know. You know, she's all right, isn't it? Yeah, she's all right. Is George? What's he going to do? I don't know. He's going to football, isn't he? Right. So I'm now talking like this, right? You know, there's an adaptation that I can talk Cockney, right? Because you're living on a council estate.
And you have no choice.
Right.
You have to blend in.
You have to blend in. You have to blend in. And because the blending in was really fascinating because, you know, whenever I said, oh, I came from South Africa, they say, where? Africa? What do you mean you
the
come?
south
Yeah.
of Africa.
Yeah. It's like, what do you mean South Africa? What? They had no clue really of the continent. They had really no clue of the continent. And who the white people had the clue of were people coming from the Caribbean, the Windrush, right? So that was there was more recruitment of people from the Caribbean coming into the UK. Okay. So they would say to me, right, you look like you come from Barbados, mate. Barbados. And I'm like, no, I come from South Africa. What? What's that about? Right? So there was a real confusion. And I remember out of 1,200 students, I was the only African kid in the secondary school. And the rest were all Jamaicans, Trinidad, right? Barbados, Tobago, all from that. So I was like, kind of like the outcast. It was kind of the outcast. And it was like, you know, I said, oh yeah, I had a best friend here and there, Henry Ellis. And I noticed that they didn't have African names, you know. So I didn't quite fathom, how come they don't have African names? You know, there were Henry Ellis, there was, what was his name? Kevin Norrie, you know, Kevin Williams, you know. They had all these, you know, English-sized names, but I didn't click. I didn't click. Where did these names come from? And why have I got a name like Koto Bolofo? And I would be teased, and they'd call me. They would tease me and call me Coco Buffalo, right? That's the name, and that used to make me so angry. It used to make me so angry because I have this name, and they'd say, "Oh yeah, you're Coco the Clown, ain't ya?" Right? And I was like, oh my God. And we had school fights in the playground, right? School fights in the playground, because I was like defending my name. I was defending my name because I'm not called Coco. You watch it, it's Koto, right? So it would be like after school, you'd have a fight, you know? Exactly, let's meet behind the gym. And boy, some people used to box me bad. Boof. And I'm like, and they say, Henry said, look, you have enough. No, I can do it. I can do it. I can do it. No. He's going to look. And the guy said, look, leave it, mate. Look, I think you've had enough. No, I haven't. I'm going to get you. Oh my God. And sometimes when you want to fight, you're like, yeah. You call me Koto, right? You know what my name is, right? Yes. Don't ever you call me Coco. Yes. And you say it in front of everybody.
Yes. So they know.
Yeah, so we know. And they'll be like, yeah, Koto, yeah, that's it, you know. Yeah. So this is a secondary school. Yes, this is not grammar schools, right? Yeah. And in the secondary schools, what I noticed, it was very fascinating, they called us boy, right? Even if you're white, black, Indian, or whatever, you boy, come here. You boy. And I used to think, my God, you know, there's this authoritarianism, you boy, and all this. So it was, and again, it was divided that, there were 9 levels. There was 9 levels of lessons. There was the A lessons, that was for the white children, and the B was for the Indian children, and it went down to ED, and I was like in EDF, right? I'm like, you know, where we don't get
one African.
So you know, you're not having the right tuition, you know. So anyway, that was really the system, and I used to hate that school so much, called the secondary school. Secondary. So okay, you're living in a secondary school, you're living in a council flat, you've got the skinhead environment at that time. And then you've got this travel document. People don't even know I got a travel document, you know? They think, oh, he's one of us, you know? He's one of us, you know? It's like, and I can even talk like, you know what I mean? You know, boy, you're telling me right, man, you want to rough you up now, you know? So you start adapting to say you can speak Cockney, you can speak like a Jamaican with an accent, you know the reggae music, Gregory Isaacs, you know, and you know like, Dubwise, you know, and all, you know all those, Dubwise records and things like that. So, and you start dressing like Scar and all this, and the fashion element, I love it, you know. I love the fashion element, I like the dressing, you know. You look really cool, you look sharp, the hat still stays there. So it was fascinating that I liked fashion, but no photography at the moment. Nothing, absolutely nothing. But I just realized that, what I noticed that, I had an affinity to hanging around with the Indian kids. I had an affinity, whereas the Jamaicans and all that, they didn't accept me, Whereas the Indian ones, they did accept me, and I noticed that they were really good learners. They really studied, They really studied. So sadly, it was a situation where our school was so violent in Acton. It was in Acton. It was so violent that it was a school that we had the first stabbing of a child, It was the first school that had a stabbing. Now, if you do your research really well on Google, you will find there's a documentary film that used to come on Monday nights, and it was called Panorama, okay? And it was run by a person called David Dimbleby, right? He presented the show. And they presented, it was a topic, it's always a political topic of this is what's happening, 1 hour long. And it was really, really good, It was like, it has the music, the world going around, and this is Panorama. And it was always like a controversial topic. And what do they do? Right, you've got to check this out because it's incredible. It was the first reality documentary, of a school, of how a normal school, a secondary school, operates in the UK. And they picked our school. Wow. Crazy. So I remember this so well. How they did it, they were very, very clever. The camera team, they spent 6 months there. Everybody was like, good behavior. The children, them Rastafarian boy likes me now. He like me bad, you know what I mean? Koto, come sit next to me, boy. Yeah, this is my African friend, no? Yeah, he's all right, no? Yeah, right. Henry likes me now, right?
Of course, because the cameras are here.
Yeah, the cameras are here. All good behavior. All like, even the teachers, good behavior and everything like that. Now we started getting used to the cameras. We start slouching. Them boys slouching the leg on the table like this, Right? Them like, miss, what you gonna do? What you gonna tell me now? So
that sounds like such a bad school.
It was rough.
Yeah,
the harder they come.
Sounds like it.
So, what is it?
Documentary.
Yeah, we didn't care about the cameras, right? But I was on good behavior, right? They filmed all the bad things about that school, smoking in the toilets and all the teacher trying to control the kids, sit down, problem children, the chaos. It went out public, right? What is it, the film? My school was called Faraday High School. Faraday High School. They always have these names after scientists, all these schools in England, right? Yeah. Faraday High School. So it went out public. It was played on Monday night, and you'll see it on Google. I found it, right? Faraday High School. Faraday Secondary School or Faraday High School. They changed it to high school, right?
Yes, after it was secondary.
Secondary then. So then it went high school. Then that film went out. The following day, the students, they burnt the whole gym down. They burnt the whole gym, burning in flames.
Because of?
Because of that program. They burnt it to ashes.
Oh my God.
Ashes. The whole gymnasiums were just burnt. I think there were 4 or 3 gymnasiums, wooden floors, torched them. When I saw that, I said, Dad, I gotta get out of here. This school is just dangerous, you know. They've had they have had a stabbing, and I remember we were all paraded. All the boys were paraded all in the playground. They were paraded all in the playground, and we were having an identification who did this, you know. And the guy was on a mounted police horse, and there was a police van, and we used to call them meat wagons. We called them meat wagons. So the police went into we were all in the playground, so they couldn't identify it was an Indian boy that was stabbed. So the police went into the, headmaster's office. This is how violent the school was. And they went with the mother. The horse was just, tied on the reins, but the police officers went in there. All the boys, especially, all the white ones, they attacked this police van by smashing the glass. It was smashing the glass, kicking the thing like crazy, right? Yeah, pigs, you fucking pig. And then they went back, stood there, all in the playground, and the police inspectors came out and they saw their van destroyed. Trash. And that's when I said, Dad, I gotta get out of here. Then I just cannot be here. Then I said, Dad, I need to transfer. I transferred to an all-Indian school in Southall, and it was called Domus Wells High School. And that's where I kind of got the learning, because I saw that the Indian people were very serious, you know. They come with $1, they start owning all these shops, you know. You think they become the doctors, you know. So I said, I want to be in an environment like this, you know. And, they're very nice. There was only two black. It was Debbie something, right, and me, over the 2 students out of all Indian schools. And this is what you call segregation, you know. This is what you call segregation in the UK, you know. This is the UK, you know. So I said, no, I'm going to go there. Very nice, you know. I started learning, Punjabi and, learning how to cook samosas.
Integrating yourself again.
Just integrating oneself again.
I love that.
And there was art lessons in there, and I liked art, you know. But still, I've got a travel document, you know. So then, what is it? My daddy wanted me to become a doctor, right? Hey, Koto, how freedom is? When the freedom comes, right? I want you to be a doctor, and you go back and help the people there in the ghettos and to help the children. So that was his ambition. Like every African family that comes to the UK, they want them to be doctors, and you go back and you help the people. And of course me, doctor, we did biology lessons at school. We had to dissect rats, They're frozen rats, and you have to do dissection, and then you have to pull. It was so terrible. Yeah, and then you pin this thing down, and you have to write little notes and say, yes, intestine, and it's like, this is terrible. And you even do it to worms, and you're like, this is just not on.
I don't want to do this.
I just don't want to do this, right? The Indian people are like cutting this thing, written, because they're going to be the doctors, right? Me, I'm like, oh no, I can't do this. I don't want to do this poor thing, This is, it's really squirmish. It's like, I close my eyes, and I said, no, this is just not for me. So what happens? I then start playing truant, right? And then going to the art lessons in school, And, the art lessons are really cool there. They're very nice. And I'm doing a bit of painting, horrible paintings, tracing pictures, right? Tracing like a Picasso and saying I did it, right? And then it comes to the real exams. I think it's the July exams or June exams, The final exams that are really going to take you to the next level. I turn up, there's many desks in the gym, and everybody's like doing this. And I'm like looking over my shoulder this way, trying to copy, like this. Ostrich neck. I'm like trying to see
what's the answer?
What's the answer? Which box do I tick? My friend would go, and I'd be like, I think he said 5. Right? And it's like the teacher's walking down like this, walking down like this. And then somebody would slip you a note and they'd be like, you're going to get caught. And I flunked all those exams. It was just like, it was a useless try.
But the art world had opened up.
Yeah, it's suddenly something's happening. Yes. So then, cut a long story short, I then tell Dad that I want to become an artist. A what? A hippie?
Ooh.
A hippie.
Because that's exactly what he would think.
Yeah, he would think that, He would think, a hippie? You are going to be these hippies that do nothing, draw on the pavements and things like this? You are supposed to be a doctor. He was so devastated, so devastated. Then, blessings to my mom, blessings to you, Daddy, right? You had the right path, Daddy.
He did.
You did have the right path.
Your father was a great man.
Great man,
with
really,
vision.
with vision. But this art thing didn't. There was no.
He didn't have a point of reference.
Yeah, there's no point of reference. There's absolutely no point of reference, which you're saying is correct. So he had the points of reference of people making cars and things like this.
Doctors.
And the wonderful thing. Yeah, right. Let me not divert. Right. So he's like, oh my God, loser. We loser now. My mom said, hey, Miege, hey. I'm sure, he knows what he wants, right? So my dad was like, what am I going to tell my friends here? We are political activists here, and I have a hippie. A hippie.
Oh, wow. But also he's thinking, I have just migrated the whole planet. To get here for him to become an artist.
Exactly.
What is he talking about?
What's he talking about?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So now, right, my mom said, hey, Wena, outla Koto. That is disappointed. He's disappointed in you, right? You better back up and you become what you have to become. And she said, Ndate, yeah, I'm sure he's going to do something great. So I'm like, I'm sweating, no pressure. No pressure. I'm like, thanks, Mom. Thanks. I'm like, really? I had no direction. So then, I have just, a few, paintings traced, by the way. They were done by tracing paper. I then applied to colleges, right? I applied to St. Martin's. The best St. Martin's, there was Kingston, there was the London School of Printing in Elephant Castle. There was 5 of them. There was 5, but St. Martin's was the one.
Okay.
That was the one.
Yeah.
That was the jewel,
yes, sir.
right?
Yes,
that was the jewel. We're not going to take this boy in. Are they going to take this boy in, right? He's got some tracing drawings, right? And he's going to say, I did this, right? I go to St. Martin's, right? And the thing is, to go there, you had to have 5 O levels. It's an academic thing, and you ask yourself, I need 5 O levels. I need biology, I need chemistry, physics, English literature, and English. I said, to become an artist?
That doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make sense. This is where I just said, systems are wrong. Systems are, and this is what I want to talk about. It's like, you have to recognize something's wrong. The shape of things, it's not fitting into my world. Yes. It is not. And it's an instinct, and you have to go with your gut instinct to say, biology, chemistry, physics, English literature, and English.
How do those come into?
How do you come in to do art? What is this, right? So I say, I'm going to go for the appointment, right? I'll go for the appointment.
Oh, we see you don't have 5 O levels.
And I said, well, I didn't think I need them because I want to become an artist, right?
Well, you have to have that sort of qualification to be an artist.
The bureaucracy,
right.
the system.
The system.
Yes,
and I'm like, Jamaican style.
Yes, of course.
I say, no, I don't need this. Me not bothered with this thing, right? I go to the next place, right? Same thing. I go to the next place, same thing. And I'm like, oh man. So there's a college. It's the 6th college. It's a mediocre college, below mediocre. It does languages, catering, right? Design, what else? And art and design. It does everything.
Yes.
Everything but
A
nothing.
bit of this
A
and
bit,
that.
a bit of this, master of this and master of none, you know?
get that.
It's one of those, you know? You come out saying, yeah, I got a diploma, and then I'm going to become like a ticket inspector. You know, it's like,
It's one of those.
it's one of those. I kind of had a fun time, you know, it was great. I met her at college, she got pregnant, and I had to let it go. Now I've got a kid, you know? So we're looking for housing now. It's one of those, right? So I said, right, okay, I'm in one of those. All right.
And you're live on Dead Radio. And you're live on Dead Radio.
When I'm in one of those, still a political refugee, travel document, that's still
In your pocket.
in my pocket, right? Nobody knows, right? Because they think, oh, he's one of us, right? So I'm there, but I'm always one of them, but very rebellious, right? Anybody triggers me, right? I just let loose, like that. I just let loose, right? It's something that happens. So anyway, so I recognize that I'm now at this college, right? It's a 1-year course to get into the 5-year course. It's like, they call it a foundation course.
Oh, yes,
Yeah.
to get into.
Yeah, so you do 3 weeks of drawing, 3 weeks of history of art.
Boring.
Snore. I would be sleeping, right? Right, 3 weeks of a bit of fashion, right? So there's just little bits of 3 weeks in that whole year, you know, 3 weeks of the 3 weeks of that, right? And I'm like, Daddy was right. They're all in the cafeteria, and these are hippies, right?
He was right, they are hippies.
And they're smoking them joint, boy. They're smoking them joint in cafeterias. And I'm like, this is just not the way to do. I said, and they're like, you know, these are the failed people that didn't make it in the professional world. And I recognized that. And I said, God, I was at school. School was better. I see this clearly. And I said, oh my God, my dad was right, you know. And they're like hanging around with young college students and like, yeah, like this. And the canteen or whatever the hangout place, it's just full of smoke. I'm like, what the hell? I'm like, nah, this is not me. This is not happening, right? I just don't go there because something doesn't, it doesn't feel right, you know? I always listen to your gut instinct. If it says no, don't go there. If you want to go there, you touch the fire. When you're a kid, you're burnt. Your mom said, why you touched the fire, right? So it's up to you. You want to go touch that? If you make it out, great, right? So I'm like in the world of like, udedi, man. Him right, you know? Echoes, right? Echoes. I'm like, hey, there's nothing wrong with hippies, right? There's been there was a great year of the 60s, right? Sure. The revolution of 60s. But you're in a situation, you're an African child, right? And you're seeing this with an African family. The puzzle is not working.
You don't have the luxury to become a hippie.
Exactly. So I'm like, you know, this don't feel right. So then on the course, there's a photography course, right? There's a photography course, right? I've got no interest in photography whatsoever. I'm like, you know, I don't even think of my dad being as a, you know, he's got his hobby, photography. I'm like, well, photography's next. I couldn't stand history of art. Slept through that, right? I was like sitting there like snoring, right? Oh, it's time to go, right? You know, Rembrandt, oh my God, wow. I'm like, oh, pointillist, you know, restaurant, oh my God, you know. It's not just going in the ears. It's too intellectual. The books, it's like, oh my God, I can hardly read or write. I'm like, turn the page. So anyway, 3 weeks of, what is it, photography.
Class, yes, sir.
So now, it was during the Margaret Thatcher time where they were cutting down on colleges, you know, cutting big cuts. So this college was affected. The photography section was really tiny. It was a small, tiny section. It was really like a tiny little workshop where you can just borrow a camera. You borrow cameras from your department, right? And so there was 5 students, 5 students, if I can remember, 5 or 6 students, and we were allowed 1 camera, and it was called a Zenith camera. A Zenith camera was a Russian camera. A Soviet camera, because there was no Russian.
It was the Soviet
Soviet Union, and it had the CCCP on the camera, made in the Soviet Union, right? So that didn't exist, Russia. Okay, so we had this camera, and it's built like a tank. It's built like a tank. It's solid. If you want to have a fight with somebody, you throw that camera, he's out.
Yes, sir.
That's how strong that camera is. You drop that camera on the ground, nothing happens to it, right? So these cameras were solid. And then there was an East German camera called a Patrika, right? East Germans were not so strong, but the Zenith, the Soviets, they were strong.
Of course.
When you hear the shutter go, kacha, you have the red flag. Kacha, comrade, you've taken a picture. So that's what that camera was. It was robust, okay? So anyway, we were using this camera, and there was 5 students amongst us, and I was one of them. And what you had to do, we would go into the park, we're sent into the park, and I take a picture, and we'll have a notebook and say, Koto, frame 1, okay? I pass it to Jill. She looks around, she takes a picture, and she knows 2. Then Simon has that. We walk with Simon as a group like this. He sees something, a bird, that's his picture. So there is no dispute to say, that's my picture.
Because you guys were also using
35mm film. And it's got numbers on there, okay? So that's how you knew that was your frame.
That's brilliant.
Okay? So anyway, so you go up to the darkroom. I've never really been in a darkroom. And then the tutor's describing how you put the film in a spool, and it's pitch black. We're like, we can't see anything. Pitch black, he's putting in a spool. He'll show us a used film to say, this is how you put it in the spool, and it's really tricky, a spindle. They call it a spindle. You put it in the spindle, and you're like this, then it spools up. You can see my hands are fast, because I know how to do it, right? But when you're in the beginning, you're you're in the dark trying to thread the thing in, it's pitch black, and you're trying to thread it in, you're like, oh my God, and you drop the film on the floor, right? And you're like, you can't turn the light on. You can't turn the light on. It's going to ruin the film. So anyway, he shows us, he takes our film, he said, we've all got to be in the dark, and then and then presses the film, blah, 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 and then we see the negative he's processed, right? So we say, wow. Oh yeah, we're like, yeah, we're like, oh yeah, that's right, it's all right, we're not like really keen. Yeah. And then he puts it in the enlarger, it projects light onto a photographic paper, silver gelatin paper, but we have a red light on now. You can see, now we can see. So we see that it's projected, the light is projected now, the negative, and we're like, yeah, yes. We're not like, now he takes that and he immerses it into a transparent liquid that looks like water. And then magic happens. You start to see an image appear. Oh! Till this very day, and if I still go into a lab, I don't care what they tell me about the chemistry, this, that, right? It is absolutely like sorcery. It's absolute magic. It's absolute magic. You see this, and everybody goes, wow! What our wows come. Wow, isn't it brilliant? Yeah. Oh, that's my picture. Wow. I don't like your picture. Yeah.
It's shit. That's a shit picture.
So there's music in that little lab. There is music, So anyway, when I saw that, I then really was absolutely hooked on this. Really, really hooked on photography. Now, in that year, right, we had to do, repeat like fine art drawing, nude study. There's somebody standing in winter in the middle of the table, naked, and I'm like, oh my God. How can you stand there naked? You're feeling so embarrassed. You're like, as you're young, you're like, how can you do that? And I'm like, oh my God, he's weird.
He's a hippie.
It's really weird. Cold winter, freezing, and there was a little like stove to warm the person up, and we're like so embarrassed. I said, I can't go there. I really cannot go there. I'm going out to go and take pictures, right? So I go to the technical cabinet. I said, listen, can you lend me this camera, right? I'm going to take up pictures. So lend me the camera. They said, are you supposed to be in the fine art room? I said, no, sir said I could do it.
Yeah. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, don't worry about it. Sir said I could do it. You become like a little fibber, a little fibber, right? So I'm out there taking pictures of anything and everything. Really quickly. I run to the lab, right? I run to the lab.
To experience the magic again.
I'm experienced in the magic for 1 year. I'm not even going to the lessons. I've got a desk and I've always put, gone to the library for research, right? I know I'm not even in the library. I'm like, magic, right? So I'm loving it. I really love it, right? I'm really proud. My head's big, right? Weren't you in the graphics lesson? Nah, I don't need that. What's that going to do me, right? And they're like, oh, the exams are coming up. They're going to assess your work. Who cares, I've got some work somewhere, I'll put the ones I did in the beginning up. But now, I'm really sort of arrogant, I'm sure of myself. And then then there's a time a tutor says, I said, Steve, look at these pictures. They're really brilliant, aren't they? Aren't they brilliant? He says, God, these are really crap. And I said, well, what do you mean they're crap? There's nothing in them. Look at the content. There's absolutely nothing in them. I said, but look, the printing. Look at the printing. Look how I've got the greys and the tones and the blacks. Look at the blacks. Look how I got the deepness, and you could see like the white just reflects. Look at the printing. Look at the printing, man. He says, yeah, great prints, but crap pictures.
Good pictures.
Right. And he was really hard. Steve Fletcher was so hard. Nice guy, right? Really nice guy. Supportive of students, right? And he was very supportive of me doing, the photography, but he said, Coat, you got to do the lessons. You can't just keep doing that. They won't catch me, Listen, you got to do the lessons. I like what you're doing, but you got to do. So I've got like photographs, and he's just killing them.
Tears them down.
Oh man, and I'm getting aggressive. I'm like, you've hit the finger trigger. I'm like, you don't know what you're talking about. I know what I'm talking about, right? I've got the job.
Yeah.
And what have you got?
Nothing. You're a fake hippie.
Exactly right. So then it's like, and he says, look, calm down, Coat. Listen, calm down. Listen, right? And he says, well, if you think they're crap, I've been wasting my time in that lab, right? And you could have told me that. I'm trying to blame him now. I'm trying to blame him, right? And he says, no, listen, calm down. Look, what you got to do, you got to pick a subject, right? You got to pick a subject. You could be a sports photographer, a photojournalistic photographer, you're a wedding photographer. You could be a fashion photographer. And he reeled another one off, all these, just 2 subjects down. And I say, hey, Steve, what's a fashion photographer? All right? And he says, well, it's a person that takes pictures, excuse me, right? The world, right? This is going to be an inappropriate word that was used commonly back then. It's a person who takes pictures of birds. Young girls were called birds in those days, right? Boys were called geezers or blokes.
Blokes, yes.
Right, yeah, geezers or blokes. He's a nice geezer, right?
He's a nice geezer.
Yeah, nice geezer. And it was coming from a girl, like, I like him, So birds and geezers, So when I say, yeah, it's like a person that takes pictures of birds, right? And he said, yeah. I said, Sorry, my darling. Right. This is very sort of like man, boy, girl. You know, it's like, so I love birds, right? And I thought, oh, easy way to pick them up, right?
Best way to do that.
Best way to. He said, look, why don't you go to the cafeteria at lunchtime, right? Go to the cafeteria and ask a couple of birds that you'd like to do pictures of them, you know, portraits, you know, a couple of portraits, right? And say you're a fashion photographer, right? And I said, are you sure? He said, yeah, it always works. So I went to the cafeteria, went there confidently with the Zenith. Yeah, Zenith, Russian, comrade, strong will not let me down. The comrade camera will not let me down. I go there and I see a bunch of birds. And I said, hello. They look at me with arrogance, like to say, what?
Who's this geezer?
Who's this geezer?
Yes.
Right? Who's this geezer? What's he want? Is he trying to pick us up? Right? I said, listen, hear me out, girls, right? I'm a fashion photographer, right? Nervous, I'm a fashion photographer. And, you know, I love the way you're dressed, right? I'd just like to do a couple of portraits of one of you. Who's going to volunteer? You know, you can come to the studio, the graphic studio, just against the white wall, and just a couple of portraits, and I'll give you some pictures back. How about that? Silence. Oh, I'll do it.
Hey.
I went, oh, all right. What's your name? What's your name? Susan. All right, Sue. Right. Listen. Whenever you finish your lunch, we'll just go to the graphics room, right? Because that's where our room, it's empty, right? So she says, I really want to finish. They all look at her like, she's gone with him, right? So she goes, and then what is it, nervously, right? Because now I'm taking a picture of a bird, right?
Of course.
And the geezer's got to be good. The geezer's got to be good.
I mean, you did call yourself a fashion photographer.
Exactly, right? Then I have her against the white, a white wall. It was a white wall in the graphics room. And I start doing these pictures, right? I have no idea because I've been taking pictures of bottle tops in the street, pictures of rubbish, bins, dustbin, anything that goes, it was just to process a roll. That was the idea, to go back into that dark room and say,
For the magic.
For the magic, right? I'm just like intoxicated by that. So I'm like fumbling around with the camera going, I'm taking like this. Yeah, I'm nervous, right? So are you really a fashion photographer? She said, yeah, I am, So I do this often, like this, right? Exposure, I'm not even looking at the exposure properly. I have no idea, right? No idea. And I said, oh, thanks a lot. Listen, I'll see you next week in the cafeteria and I'll give you some pictures. So I go up in the dark room and then under the enlarger, and it's called dodging. It's called dodging the light, and you're dodging the light not to hit the picture too much, to expose more light on one. We call it dodging. It's called burning in the picture. So I put it in that transparent liquid called developer. I wait 30 seconds, slowly, a face comes, and I am blown away with a human being on a piece of white paper. And I'm like, wow, this is magic. Steve was right.
He was right.
Pick a subject, he said, and I picked fashion. And this bird looks amazing. Wow. It was the portrait of her. And I can remember this picture so clearly. And I thought, oh my God. I went to the cafeteria and I went to that bird and I said, listen, Jill, here's a picture. And them birds, they flocked around the geezer. They flocked around the geezer.
You became Birdman immediately. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
They flocked. And I was now taking pictures like on a serious note, taking them to the park, taking them. I said, oh, if you've got any clothes, a coat. And I was doing their hair. I was doing their hair, I was doing the makeup. I became like really serious. I became really serious. Like this, taking pictures, go up there, process them, trying to learn to develop and trying to learn to take a subject of a person, subject matter. And I was liking it, I was loving it. Okay, assessment time, Mr. Bolofo, we want to see the work. Everybody has to put it on the wall, along the corridors. And I got nothing. I've only got the beginning of what I started with.
Yeah, well, you just started.
Right. So I put that up, right? And now the tutors, they know that, yeah, we've not seen him in classes, you know.
He's done for.
Yeah. So they come, you know, everybody's getting good notes, you know, they're like, well done. Well done, George. Very good. And I'm hearing, well done, you know, well done, oh, bravo, you could have done this, but yeah, you've definitely passed, you know. And I'm like, oh my God, it's coming to me. It's really coming to me. The landslide is coming to me.
All the way down.
And I'm having the beginning of the work I did. Right. Koto. Now, it seems you've not been attending the courses. It seems you've been concentrating on something else, and we are well aware of it. Well, you know, it's like, I don't believe in all this stuff, right? And it's like, it's not really me, right? That's the answer you give. Well, what really is you? Well, you know, I'm kind of like photography. I like this thing, you know, I've taken wonderful pictures of birds and they're loving it, you know, and I really like that, you know. Trying to play humble because, and realize I have a grant. I have a grant, meaning to go to the school given by the government, right? And that helps also with the family, the books and everything like that. And I said, well, you know, I really like, you know, taking pictures of birds and look what I've done, you know. But it's not the curriculum, Koto. You know, where's the fine art drawing?
Yes.
The history of art, you know.
The things that you're here for.
Exactly, and you know, where's the piece on Rembrandt and you know, the Renaissance period, and what's happened to that? Well, sir, you know, it's like I find that boring, you know. I kind of like fell asleep. You know, it's just like, then people are dead. You know, they're not there anymore. You know, so it's kind of like this is what I want to do. Now let me flash back. Let me flash back why I was like this. I flash back. When I was taking pictures of the birds at that time, I used to play an immense truancy going to London, 45 minutes on the tube by myself and looking for work at magazines.
Okay.
That's what I was doing, right? Going to look for work at magazines that were rejecting me. Now I'm at college taking pictures of these lovely ladies. Let's update the word now.
Yes.
These lovely ladies, right? We've updated the word because the word birds no longer exists. It's inappropriate. These lovely ladies, I'm taking pictures of them, but I am playing a massive truant going to London from West London to Oxford Street, which is 45 minutes on the train, and looking for work so I can have my pictures published. I'm looking for them to say, hey, we got a commission for you. You know, we got a commission for you. Would you like to do this commission? That's what I'm looking for. Because I'm realizing I need to get into the real world. And this is an instinct.
Of course.
I'm seeing my tutors that are smoking pot. And I'm saying to myself, these kids, what are they going to do after? What are they going to do after?
This is not the path for me.
This is not the path for me, right? So what happens is that I then start to look for these pockets of work, but I'm not getting any work, right? So I then, what I used to do during college, where I'm supposed to be in the curriculum of college, I used to go outside where they had young designers, upcoming designers. They're in Camden Town, and they've got like tiny little stalls, you know. She's done a coat, she's done jewelry, and I used to borrow their jewelry and exchange pictures. At that period, the fashion was Gothic. People were into Gothic, you know. So you go with the trend, you know. You're into Gothic. And I remember my first girlfriend, she was also into Gothic. She had one head side shaved like this, and the hair hanging down like this. Phil Oakey, I know, Soft Cell, that was the music, Spandau Ballet. It was all that sort of like dark, sort of Gothic-y wear, you know? So I go to, and the store is still there. If you one day go to London, it's still there, and it's called Frog, just as in frog. Okay. And they sell still Gothic jewelry till this very day. And I was like so surprised when I walked there. I said, oh my God, you know, that's like in the 80s, you know, Gothic is still here.
40 years later,
still selling. So there on the steps, sitting outside, this is the most important part of the story, right? On the steps, there was this guy. He was a white man, and he had dreadlocks. And I thought, what the boy doing with the dreadlock boy? The man's white, why are you playing that? Privileged he is. You think I can play like this, you know? Just wear it. Dreadlock belongs to a black man. You know what I'm saying? Right? Gregory Isaacs and things like that, you know? So, no boy, this boy know nothing. That was in my mind. It was like, who's he?
Who is this guy?
Who is he? Well, you know, right? We've had it so bad, right? You know, and this boy can fool around, right? Just fool around like this. So I went in there, right, looking at him, right, with distaste, right? I went in there and I said, excuse me, my name is Koto Bolofo, and I've got my portfolio here, and I wonder if I could, you know, borrow some of your jewelry, and you know, I'm doing like a fashion shoot. It's a testing shoot with my friends, and I just need some jewelry, and I'll give you pictures back. I said, oh my God, your pictures are really nice. They're really lovely pictures. Right? I had no magazine work at all, right? So they're really nice, and I'm always brave enough to go there, right? If the person says no, so it's fine, you know. I just think of them on the toilet, right? I think of them on the toilet and say, that's you, right? So I go there, and very polite, and they say, God, here, come and have a look at these pictures. Oh, they're really nice. So the dreadlock boy come in, the white dreadlock boy come in, right? And he's saying, oh, he's over my shoulder now. Oh, I love these pictures. And I'm like, this is not your...
Yeah, like, get out of here.
Yeah, get out of here. And I can't say that, right? Because it seems they know him, right? It seems they know him. And I'm like, listen, in my head, this is going to spoil it, you know? I don't need to be endorsed by some white boy dread.
Cosplaying
right.
as a dread.
As dread.
Yes.
What you know about dread music, boy? You know, I'm South African, right? But I know a lot about dread, right? So, and then I'm turning the pages and they say, oh, I love that one. I really like that one, right? And I'm like, oh, please, I don't need you endorsing my work. Like, I'm like, just look at you, right? Don't do this, right? Just don't do this. And then they it's all like talking to him too. Yeah, that's really nice, George, you know? I hear George, that's really nice, right? And I'm like, oh my God, they do know him. I'm like, but listen, I live on a council estate. You come on a council estate dressed like a white dread, them boy gonna beat you hard. We got skinheads and scar boys there, boy. You know, them don't mix at the moment. They don't mix, right? You know, it's like, you know, it's like working class. And where you come from, if we want to see a dread, we want to see a black man as a dread. You know what I mean? Say, right? So, and I'm like, this is really annoying me. It's really trigger. I said, no, I can't put trigger here, right? Because I need the jewelry. I just need the jewelry. That's all I need, right? To make this shoot. Because the thing I saw what is basically a shoot that was done by a really top level photographer. And the thing I was copying, you know, I was saying, oh, this is the trend. I said, all right, I got to copy. Follow. Yeah, let me follow. So I need this jewelry. So I said, I really love this one, right? And I'm like, Jesus Christ, please, right? Please don't. Trigger, come. And over the counter, he's really good, isn't he, George? And then George says, he says, yeah, you know, I know this magazine, right? And it's called New Sounds, New Styles. And I'm like, never heard of it in my head, right? And I'm like, yeah, like this, right? Right. Yeah, New Sounds, New Styles. And, you know, the editor's called, I think it was Stephen Graff. I remember definitely Graff, Graaf, right? Stephen Graff. I don't know the first name, but we'll call him Stephen. Stephen Graf. Yeah, he's a good friend of mine. He's a really good friend of mine. Listen, it's just round the corner, Lexington Road. You won't miss it, right? It's number so-and-so. And tell him I sent you, George sent you, right? And I'm like, yeah, right. And I'm like, yeah, right. It's a yeah. Anyway, I was, thing is, right, I'm thinking about doing this group, right? And it's going to be something with culture, like, there's people with Rastafarian. I don't really know exactly what it is, but I'm still like working it out. And I'm like, oh my God. I said, this guy is on a planet. Yeah. He's really on a planet. Them come from hippie school. Now I see a white dreadlock man for the first time, right? And I said, this is really confusing, right? This is really confusing. I'm really lost. And I said, where did you say it was, by the way? He said, Lexington Road. It's two doors down the road, and you won't miss it, right? So, but tell him George sent you. So I said, thanks, what was your name again? George. All right, George, all right. So thanks a lot. And I took the jewelry, took the jewelry, and I said, I'll be back next week with the pictures, like that. So I run over to this Lexington Road. I get there, and then I just open these swing doors, and I see the most productive place I cannot imagine. The secretary had a Mohican. Right? And I was like, wow. What is this place? Right? And I was like looking at all these people, the dress code, torn tights, but they're productive. They're like, there's something happening here. I've never seen this energy before. I'm like, what is this? I'm loving George in my head. George is echoing in my mind. Says, can we help you? I said, yeah, George sent me. Oh, George! I'm like, yeah, George, yeah. Hypocrite, here I come. George sent me. Oh, and he told me about Stephen Graf. I've got my portfolio. Oh, right. Whatever George says, right, I'll get Stephen. Just hang out here. I look at her with torn tights. I'm like, wow, this is amazing. I'm seeing something completely new. It's just so out of the norm, right? And then I see a signal in the distance, and I see this man waving. This must be Stephen then, like this, right? It's like productive. I see this, and she's like, come over. I go over there, like, and I said, yeah, George sent me here. George, George, he's always got a good eye. And I'm like, yeah, I think he has, humbling myself. He opens my portfolios. God, these are really good. And I'm like, yeah, George said that. He said they were really good too, flicking the book. Oh my God, wow, these are amazing. The models you've got here, they're absolutely brilliant. Who's this? Oh, that's my girlfriend. Wow, she's amazing, like this. And I'm like, my God, this is like, somebody's actually telling me and so like giving this sense of like, they're liking what I do. Yes, sir. I was not getting credits at the college, right? I was a rebel, real rebel. So they said, listen, what are you doing in a couple of days? I said, nothing, nothing. Of course. Nothing, not telling them I'm at college, nothing. So there's a group, right? One of the members has broken away from the group, and he used to be with Depeche Mode, okay? And he's joined up with a singer called Alison Moyet, right? M-O-Y-E-T, Moyet. And brilliant singer, by the way. She's still around. And basically, he had a lot to do with Depeche Mode, but you know what groups do, they break up, and it's one of those things. I'd like you to do, we're doing a feature on them, we're doing a feature on them, and their studios is just around the corner. If you could do a couple of shots, we'll publish them. So the day came, comrade camera, there it was, bold, there it was, comrade. Help me through this situation. This is live or die, right? So I said, my God, I don't even know how to take pictures indoors. I said, oh, I was panicking, you know, I've no lights, you know. And I said, comrade, can you do this in my head? I said, no, comrade needs lights, you know. So I went out to the back where they throw the trash, you know, where they just throw the trash. And I saw a white wall. There was a white wall,
Okay.
right? I see a white wall. And I think, oh my God, I could use that flashing back,
Yes.
you know.
To the
For the first picture.
the young lady.
Exactly.
Not the bird.
Yeah.
Yes,
Young lady. I took her against the white wall. And I'm panicking, right? Because I said, God, you know, how do I get out of this situation? So I then called them over. I can't remember the lead singer's name, but if you look, if you do your research, you'll find who the singer was in Depeche Mode. So I call him, and I remember Alison Moyet, because Alison Moyet is still going, because she's got this incredible spiritual voice, you know, a white woman with a fantastic spiritual voice at that time, incredible. So I'm now in this world. I get them out there, and you know, they don't like smiling. They're very sure of themselves. He's got his long blonde hair, you know, covering half his face, and I'm like, you know what? I like people smiling in my head, you know. I gotta get them to smile. So I do a few snaps, and they're like, you know, posing like, you know, like how musicians will pose, stiff and hard, and you know. And I'm like, this is not me, you know. It's not me. So I said, right, can you sort of like, you know, have your head on top of her head like this, just like this, okay? And Alison will be here, and you'll be here. So you've got your heads on top of each other, right? And I think that's going to be a really good picture. So I play the fool. I'm going to think it's going to be a really good picture. And they're like, are you sure? They're smiling, right? Then I got the picture. Cut a long story short, I got it published in New Sounds, New Styles. It was a quarter of a page, and they paid me £25. My father's salary as a school teacher in the UK was £14 a week. And we had to live on £14 a week. Teaching, nursing and all that were the lowest paid. And you always have the strikes with the, till today, the nurses are not paid enough, doctors. It's still the same system, you know? It's still the same system, overworked, all that. So £14, £25. I came to my dad at the council estate where we lived with a lino tablecloth, you know, the plastic covered chairs, you know.
Oh, my grandmother had those.
Yeah, you have to get plastic covered chairs. You're gonna make them dirty, you know. Right. I came there, my dad was there eating muhodu, tripe, right? The stampo.
In the UK, I love this.
Muhodu, right? This is what we ate. Chicken feet, chicken heads, right? You know, this is what we ate, you know.
You brought the diet from the continent.
Exactly. That always kept lipapa, right? So this is what we ate. And I just said, Pap, eat long. And my middle name, it's Mutlali Pula Troboneng Kot. Mutlali Pula Koto, Mutlali Pula Troboneng Kot, right? Bolofo. I presented a check and laid it there while he was eating his muhodu. King China. That it, one pillar £25 for a quarter of a page. Bonali bitso la rona. Iri Koto Bolofo. How? Wa makats andate. Bao fila £25 for just the nepetena of these two people. Ndate, there'll be more coming. There'll be more coming. Utlambona. That's when his mind clicked to say, how did you get photography to actually, it was like, it was just, what's it meant, Daddy? Mampa £14. I earn £14 a week. Getting Daddy? Nka check yana, kyaluna. That was my endorsement to say, Dad, now I'm going to do what I want. Now I'm at college. Okay, I'm at college. And I'm doing this, and I did another magazine. I've got all the copies. I did a magazine it was a teenage magazine. I worked for the New Stars for about 5 issues. But it was subculture magazines of like new, groups, Susie and the Bansheets. I mean, it was that. But I was not really into that, you know. It was like, nah, they don't turn up on time. It was like, you know, it was just too like laid back, you know. They don't want to do this. She's not into.
They're too cool.
Yeah, it was just too like, you can't direct them, you know. It's really hard to direct them because they're into protecting their image, you know. And I just said, no, I'm letting this go, and I'll go to a magazine called 19 Magazine. And the first issue, it was printed, and it was my girlfriend. We went to Brighton. By the seaside, all during college playing truant, right? Went to, and had this published, right? I think I did 19 magazines, 4 of them, right? And I've got the issues, and my mum kept every single magazine I did, every single one, bless her. And they published the pictures, and they spelled the last name wrong, Bolofo.
Of course they would.
Koto Bolofo.
Once again.
Yes, but I didn't say anything. It's fine. I was proud. And I'd show off, come back to college and say, look what I got here. This is Alison Moyer, you know, Duran. I'd boast, and they were so jealous, right? And I became the outcast, right? Now, that was happening during college, right? And then, and somebody say, you're not going to get a job. You're not going to get a job. Do you think you should play truant, do things like that? You know, you're not going to get, you ain't going to get a job, are you? Oh my God, it was just that. They were not in the real world. They were in bubble land. They were absolutely what you call bubble land. They have no sense of reality. So I think the sense
all
of
theory,
yeah,
no practical.
Exactly. And the thing is, the thing of the realism came because living on a council estate for 25 years, really vicious council estate, you wanted to get out of that condition. They had nice houses. This was the middle class that were going to these colleges to do art and things like this, you know? It was like, daddies were okay, you know, they were okay. They were not living. They didn't have the travel document in their pocket. They didn't really know what my background was, you know? They said, oh, he's just one of us, you know? But he must be living all right, you know? So they didn't know. So it was that thing of survival to say, I really want to get out of a council estate that when you, on Fridays or Thursdays, there's piss in the lift, you know, they urinate in the lift, and you're coming and doing Saturday shopping, you're 5 floors up, but you have to take your shopping in a urinated lift with your mum. You know, it was just deplorable. They put fire in the communal bins, and the smoke goes in the corridors, and the fire ambulances come the fire brigades come every week to extinguish that. That was a council estate. And I just said to myself, I want to get out of here. You know, I can't, this is not going to happen. So it became a determination to say, I want to pull myself out of this type of world of living, you know? So.
And you're live on Dead Radio. And you're live on Dead Radio.
In the end, I got expelled from the college. I did not do the curriculum, right? I didn't believe in it. I expelled. But I was a realist to understand that I'd already touched the outside world. They hadn't touched the outside world, you know? So I said, okay, and I was very arrogant. They said, Koto, I remember Bill Furlong, his name was. He said, Koto, we don't need you. And I said, I don't need you too.
Yes, sir.
And I just turned my back and I walked. Are you getting expelled? I said, yeah. Are you sure? Yeah. What about it? I'm going. It was Friday. And I had to go.
Friday.
So I had to go there on Friday, right, and tell my parents I'd been expelled. Wow. Dad just said, I lost the grant.
Of course.
So, okay. Dad really now was like, I don't understand this boy. I really don't get him. What did you raise? Is it our child? Did they do it in exchange?
Did they swap?
Did they swap? Right. So anyway, cut. I love the photography. I had to find a way to make money. I spent 5 years working in a food store called Safeways in Ealing, West London. I did night shift. It was 6 nights, night shift, right? Every day from 8 o'clock till 8 o'clock in the morning, cleaning the floors, the refrigerators and the toilets. That's what I was doing for 5 years to raise money, right? Because there was no steady job of photography. You were doing one assignment a year, freelancing, right? So I had to have this, it was an ends to a, what do you call it? A means to an end, okay? And I also noticed there was like Indian people packing, they were packing, for the goods, and they were saving money for their university, They were saving money for university because they had to pay fees, So again, it was, you're in a situation that people are hardworking. It's a means to an end. 5 years, I was doing pictures on Sunday, really tired with my friends, trying to still build the portfolio, and going to, taking a day off from work, because in the day, I'd sleep in the day and work in the night, So in the day, I'd go for an appointment. Most of the time, it's rejection. Cut a long story short, I got then, after 5 years, with mainly testing pictures and a few assignments, 1 or 2 assignments that paid me nix. I then, got in 1984, my first break to English Vogue. They opened the door. English Vogue was the first one. It's a long story, but I want to cut it short. They opened the door. And I'd seen English Vogue many times to and fro. And there was a woman there, fierce, who'd never even want to, you had to leave your book by her. And she'd say, don't worry, your book will be seen. And then you come back at the end of the day, right? I used to see my book in the same position. And it was not moved at all, right? So this happened on a regular, I was going there trying to get work. I had the initiative to say, I got to show some of these pictures because I know I'm looking at these magazines and I'm as good as them, right? I feel I'm as good as them. So how I got into English Vogue, right? Fashion is a chameleon. It changes. It changes. So this is what you've got to be observant about fashion. I was looking at magazines like Vogue, and looking at the top photographers, there was Alex Chatelain, Stephen Mazel, who still takes pictures today, all these like brilliant photographers. And I was looking at the style and I was like, wow, this is really cool. And there was one particular Vogue, but they were all dressed in black polo necks, tight trousers and cowboy boots, like looking really slick, like this. And it was taken by a photographer called Bruce Weber, right? Really they were like in positions like this, like that. I was like, wow, that is so cool, right? So I decided, right? I said, my next appointment coming up with Vogue, right? I know I've got to get past this woman because this woman, she don't let me in. She always puts the book there, right? I'm the only black photographer that keeps penetrating, right? And there was no black photographers at all. Not at that time, right? So I said, right, you know what? I'm going to dress like they dress, like cowboy boots, like this. I had a cowboy hat, long coat, and I found a belt that said Ford, the car Ford, like this. And I had like jewelry, like, silver jewelry like this. And I said, right, I think I look cool, I look like the magazine. I went there with it. I brought a silver case. I went there to Vogue House, right? Walk in there, right? And I said, oh my God, there she is again, right? So I went up there bravely. One of the things I wanted to become, not being a photographer, I wanted to become an actor.
Okay.
I loved acting a lot.
Okay.
School plays, I loved school plays.
I love that.
So anyway, I went there and I said, hi, my name is Koto Bolofo and I've just come from New York, right? The accent then was really perfect, right? It was really perfect.
You're really good with accents.
So it was really good. And I said, my name is Koto Bolofo, I've come from New York. I didn't even know where New York was. I had no clue. I had no clue. I'd read in the magazine that, it said they were using photographers from New York, right? York, for me, is in England, York, right? York, right? So New York, I didn't even know where this place was, you know? So I said, yeah, Koto Bolofo, and I'm just passing through and I'm on my way to Paris. I thought I'd stop by because I made an appointment with the art director called John Hind here. And, he wanted to see my portfolio and I've just got a little time and I'm off to Paris and I'll be day after tomorrow, I'll be catching a plane.
Love this.
This is the boy from Council Estate,
Of course.
right? I'll be catching a plane, right? There was no Eurostar. There was nothing like that. So I got to say plane. I said, you're from New York? Yeah, that's right, I'm from New York, yeah. So is he available? Because, I don't really have
a lot of time.
Yeah, I just don't have a lot of time. So it's just to stop by and, so day after tomorrow, I got to be on my way. Oh, my God. Hang on a minute. John, there's a photographer. What was your name? My name is Koto Bolofo. Koto Bolofo. Bolofo. Yeah, he's from New York. Uh-huh. Yeah, all right, I'll tell him. He's coming.
And the doors.
The door's open. He's coming right now. Would you like to take a seat? Right? And I looked at all the other portfolios in the corner thinking, that's where mine used to be. It doesn't move, right? And I'm like, I've got the silver case, I've got the cowboy hat, and I'm sitting there thinking, I hope I can pull this off, right? John Hind comes down, bless him, he's in heaven. He comes down, he's dressed in a polo neck and black too. And I thought, wow, this is a code. This is a code. So this is the code. They all look alike. So I'm part of the gang, right? So he said, hello, you're from New York. Yes, I am. Yes, I've just stopped by and I thought, I'd just call in and make this appointment. And I know day after tomorrow, I've just got to hop on the plane and get to Paris because, I've got a few appointments there. Oh, come this way. Let's go into this room here. We went to a room, a white room with light boxes, like this, fluorescent, shining. And I thought, I gotta keep this up. I have to keep this up. I said, well, most of the pictures I do, big silver case I had, Well, most of the pictures I do, most of them I do in daylight. And, the reason why I do pictures in daylight really is because, God's light is the best light.
It's the best light.
I couldn't afford a studio. So I came up with God's light is the best light. You might find articles saying that.
I love that.
So anyway, he said, oh my goodness, these are absolutely brilliant. Super. Oh, the choice of models. Wonderful. Wonderful. I've got to call Elizabeth Tilberis. Bless you, Liz. Right, up in heaven. She came down with an assistant, right? Nikki Brewster. Bless you, Nikki. I'm here, right? She came down. She was Grace Coddington's assistant, right? And she came down, had a power position. She had a power position, looking for young talent. Looked at the pictures. Oh my God, these are really lovely. Don't you think, John? That's why I called you. This champ's absolutely super. Beautiful, absolute choice of girls. Oh my goodness, beautiful. Who's that? Oh, a little girl called Linda. I met her along the way, my girlfriend.
You're in character,
Right. I'm like, can I keep this up? So, we'd like to give you basically a commission. And I didn't understand what commission meant, right? And we'd like to take you on a trip. I didn't understand what the word trip meant, right? So I was like, yeah, right. And, because we see that you like taking pictures outside. and you know, you love the sun, everything like that. And so basically, she said, would like to take you to Tunisia. And I didn't know where Tunisia was. Can you believe? Africa, yet we're on the British side.
Yes.
We know
Yes.
our side
Yes.
of the British side that they have conquered, right?
Yes.
Kenya, right? Zambia.
Southern Africa.
Yeah, exactly. We know all that side. We don't know the French side. So I had no idea where Tunisia was. So first of all, I said to her,
Yeah, can you tell me what is exactly is a trip?
well, a trip is we'd like to take you abroad, to another country, and you take pictures because there's beautiful sunlight there in Tunisia. Oh, do you mean you're going to give me a job? The accent came out.
Yes, now it finally came out. Yes.
It finally comes out. It finally comes out. Do you really mean you're gonna get? It starts to fluctuate, right? Yes, of course. And they didn't notice, right? And that's really good, isn't it? You're really good. And they, yeah, we are going to take you on a trip. I'm so excited. Your work is absolutely wonderful. Perhaps let's say in a month's time. The month's time came. My mother took me to the airport, African style. So many bags for nothing. The plane was the plane was going to leave the day after tomorrow. We're there the day before.
The day before, of course.
And we're sleeping at the airport.
Of course.
Me and Mom.
Because you can't miss the flight.
We can't miss the flight.
Of course.
And I found basically, I did Vogue in 1984. Did a couple of those issues, and then again there was an instinct to say they're only making me do the small section of things. And then I took a bus at 11 o'clock at night at Victoria Station, went to, the coast of England, and took a ferry because there was no Eurostar. I could not afford a plane, got into Paris, and that's where Paris opened the door, and my first big thing was Yoji Yamamoto catalog in 1985, because the French, they opened the door. It was so cosmopolitan. There was no snobbery about anything. I joined a film production company. I had nothing. They just said, hey, we like you as a fashion. We like your fashion. Can you adapt this to film? You'll do commercials. Papa started seeing, oh my God, my son, he's not a hippie. He's making things. I bought my mom and dad a house in South Africa, right? In Port Shepstone, a property there, huge property, and bless them.
And the rest is history.
The rest is history.
Wow. When I think about in 2026 where we are and the work that you've done, it's incredible.
It's huge. It's huge. Honestly, it's huge. It's there's Thames and Hudson, the book publishers, are going to be bringing a retrospective of the 40 years of work that I've done, and it'll be really the first major fashion book, because all the other books have been very diverse in the sense they're like of Venus Williams, how to build a Rolls Royce. How to build a Rolls Royce from scratch. I spent a year in a factory knowing how they build a Rolls Royce. So they're very diverse, the books. But this will be really the first fashion book that is going to be, people have been waiting for it because, people know they know that there's so much work they have done. And really the first black photographer who has really done all the brands and still renovating brands, Hermes, Christian Dior, Louis Vuitton. There's one right now, Baccarat, really luxury brand that does fantastic chandeliers. It's really one of the highest brands you can get, very modern, nouveau vases, and it's a very exclusive brand. And right now they're advertising the work that I did because it was renovated by a designer called Philip Stark. And Philip Stark decided to, the brand has been going through for many, many hundreds of years, but he came along and started redesigning everything. And it's Baccarat, it's a very well-known luxury brand, and I was chosen this year to really transform it.
From an aesthetic
Yeah,
perspective.
from an aesthetic, it's beautiful. It's got dance in there. It's got dance, modern choreography, because I'm a very good choreographer.
Okay.
And I was a gymnast for many, many years.
A man of so many talents. Wow, this has been such an honor for me just to sit and absorb this amazing story.
Yeah.
There's so many different directions we can go, but I think because our cards are gonna run out.
No, for sure, for sure.
I think-
It's hard to sort of like say, you know, when somebody asks me a question,
Yes, sir.
it's really hard to
It
sort of like say,
opens.
yeah, because it's sort of like you have to start really from the beginning to say, you understand how I did that,
I hear
you know? Because if you don't say, oh, you know, I could say, oh, I'll leave all the political thing, and then I'll say, well, I came to London, and then I was at school, and, you know, I had an interest in photography, and you just talk surface. You know.
I think this was amazing because context makes us understand who you are
Yeah.
today. All those times when you had to blend in, learn
Yeah.
new languages, explains who you end up becoming and
Yeah.
how you got into Vogue.
Yeah.
So context matters. And
Yeah.
I'm so grateful for
Yeah, no, and I prefer, you know, I'm Southern African.
Yes,
you know, so it's good to tell my sisters and brothers, right, of how,
If
you know,
you did it.
Yeah, how I did it.
Yes,
you know, so it's like, because you think when you're living overseas, you think to yourself, oh yeah, he just got into school, he had the opportunity to do that. And by the way, I don't even own a Leica.
I love that. I love that. So, thank you so much.
It's been good. It's been a great pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and we'll be back with another episode of Dead Radio. Yes, sir.